I'm here with Darian Renee. My name is Evan Shapiro, and this is Music Made Real. Darian, welcome. And I'm interested in knowing a little bit about how you got into the music industry originally, if you want to share with us.
Hi, Evan. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, absolutely. I have always known that I wanted to make music, that I wanted to sing, and that I wanted to be a part of the music industry, be a part of entertainment. And so my journey's been kind of crazy and kind of chaotic. I started out playing when I was really, really young. I started off playing the piano when I was about 4. And then about a good 10 years later, I picked up the guitar and started playing then. I was always playing and singing around the house. I started singing at a really young age, but I wasn't always very good. It took a lot of years of practice. And then I was performing and touring from a young age in different bands and as a solo artist. I was the kid in high school who was in like 7 bands at once because I could play a bunch of instruments and someone always wanted me in one of their bands. And so I started off that way, just performing at a young age. When I was 17, I got my first job as a talent buyer for a venue in my hometown, doing all the booking. And so I really learned quickly about the music industry that way, and had a great experience doing that. And I decided that I wanted to stay in the business side of the industry and that I always wanted a job in music. So I just took on as many skill sets as I could to try and stick with that. So I continued booking for other artists. I was working for labels. I was being an A&R, kind of doing all these side hustles in the music industry so that I could play shows at night and work in music business in the day. And that's how I got my start. I ended up going to school for music business and for audio production as well.
You also write, and I was wondering, in terms of your writing, what type of process you go through. For instance, do you tend to write the melody first or the bass line or the chords? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it really depends. I never go through the same process twice. I find that my best material has started lyrics first or vocal melody first because ideas just come to me when I'm not in the studio and when I'm not even intending to write. I'll be at the grocery store or in my car or doing something completely different and I get an idea. And that's how my best material has started, from lyrics or vocals, but it really depends on the resources that I have around me. As a producer, I love when I can just sit down in front of my computer and start with a sample or start with a bass line or drums or something else. And that's totally fun for me, but it's definitely a different process. So my processes are kind of all over the place.
That's interesting. And with the song Honestly, um, was there a particular process that you went through with that in terms of how you wrote it? Or I should say, what was the process? I mean, obviously there was a
Yeah.
particular process.
So honestly, honestly, I came up with the lyrics and vocals for that first. And I had an idea. I just had an idea for the production of the vibe that I wanted, or the feeling that I wanted the audience to get from listening. So I knew the production was going to be super organic from the get-go. I knew I wanted acoustic guitar and piano and big organic drums, and that's exactly what I went for.
That's great. And we had talked about this before we decided to do this, and you said that you'd be open to performing honestly, and that would be great if you could do that now, actually.
Absolutely. I've got my guitar right here.
Awesome.
Okay. All right, are we ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, here we go. Honestly, I can feel the weight that I've been carrying. Thought you were the one, but I was marrying the moonlight, the bright side. And I let your voice break all of my time. Honestly, I thought you were the one that I was marrying. And now every time I love, I'm just so scared of you. Digging up a hurt you thought I'd bury. With my dreams on the sidelines, I let your voice break all of my time. I knew the stars and fireworks go away, crashing burn all that you left, fading away. Honestly, I can feel the weight that I've been carrying. Closer to the closure, now it's clear to see. Now it's clear to see I'm not responsible for who you chose to be. I knew the stars and fireworks would go away. Crash and burn all that you love, fading away. You just kept talking, just kept talking, so I stayed. But your sweet talking, your sweet talk would force my world to change. You show something, show something I can't explain. Now you mean nothing, you mean nothing that I want to say. I knew the stars and fireworks go away. Flesh and blood, all that you love, fading away. Honestly, you weren't half the man that I needed you to be. Closer to the closure, now it's clear to see. Now it's clear to see I'm not responsible for who you chose to be.
That's just incredible.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I can tell that there's a lot of emotional material behind that. I can tell that there's something that really inspired you in a big way. Is that correct?
That is correct. I can give you a little bit of the backstory. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a love song. It's a sad song, obviously. but the title of the song and the reoccurring theme, honestly, I believe in honesty. It's a core value of mine, and the song is really about how you can believe in honesty, and your goal can be to be honest with other people, but how you can still be lying to yourself, or how you can still believe in pretty lies that are often handed to us.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like a defense mechanism. At least that's how I find it to be. That's very
Absolutely.
interesting. I think a lot of people would connect to that. How do you find the audience responds to the song? Like, what kind of comments do you get?
Oh, I've gotten a great response to this song. I think it does resonate with a lot of people, young women, but especially but people in general who have been in relationships or experienced heartbreak, or who have gone through a similar scenario.
Hmm. That's great. I think that's incredibly important in terms of just if you have that emotional connection with the audience, they're much more likely to keep going to your shows and much more likely to stream and purchase your music too.
I think so, absolutely. Music is all about connection, and I love telling stories. I love connecting with people, so music is just my outlet for that.
Hmm. So when you're writing in general, is storytelling a big part of your lyric writing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tend to stray away from like a typical storytelling structure, like beginning, middle, and I tend to write a lot more metaphorically and figuratively, or instead of figuratively. But I definitely aim to tell a story in all of my songs, whether it's my story or someone else's.
Hmm. In terms of just not going by that certain structure, is that something that you just consciously decided to do, or did it just kind of happen as you began writing?
It really just kind of happened. And I find that the best stories, aren't always in black and white either. They don't always have a defined beginning, middle, and end. But all we can do is take take pieces of those stories and those experiences and things that happen to us, and try and capture it, try and paint the best picture that we can.
Hmm. Absolutely. You had mentioned that you also produce other artists. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Maybe
I
about who you're working with and maybe some particular songs that you really like the most?
Sure, yeah, I can tell you about some upcoming releases that are coming out soon. I am fortunate enough to work with all kinds of artists from around the world and help them tell their stories. So there's a couple independent artists I'm working with right now. One is Hannah Raquel, and she has a song coming out called Mixed that I produced, and that's coming out May 31st, or it might already be out by the time you post this. So that's coming out May 31st, and that's called Mixed. And then there's another brand new artist. I produced his debut single. His name's Evanson Andre, and he has a single called In the Night coming out June 7th.
That's excellent. And how about for yourself, as far as do you have upcoming shows? Are you performing in a band or are you performing more as a singer-songwriter?
Yeah, I love doing shows where I can just perform with the acoustic guitar and do more of like an intimate singer-songwriter set. I do play with a band or a revolving door of musicians who fortunately choose to join my show from time to time. I have a lot of friends that I like to bring up and have joined me on stage. But I really, for the most part, do a one girl show. I'll produce my own music, or the music that I produced for my album, The Other Side of Someday. I'll have those on a track, and so I'll play guitar or I'll play piano, and whatever I can't play because I only have two hands, I'll leave in the track and play to that and do kind of a one girl band setup.
That's great. I also find, just from my own experiences, collaborating and being an executive producer, that just sometimes if one can be more of a solo artist, it just makes things a lot easier. There's so many logistics that go into forming a band and maintaining a band and just managing the relationships. Business wise and sometimes personal wise too, depending upon how people click. And I think that that can influence the creativity in a lot of ways. I don't know if you've experienced some of that yourself.
Absolutely. That was a big part of me deciding to be a solo artist. Just even things like other people's schedules and scheduling practices or who's getting to the gig at one time or things like that, and then mix that in with other people's personalities and relationship dynamics. And it's a lot. I definitely love collaborating whenever I can, whenever logistics allow it to happen, because I love the value that other writers, other players bring to the table. But there's pros and cons to it.
Are you associated with a pro like ASCAP or BMI or CSAC?
Yeah, I'm BMI.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit about how people can discover your music or go to your shows in terms of just your website, your social media links, Spotify, Apple?
I am, my music is available wherever music is. So I'm on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Apple Music, Amazon, all of that good stuff. And you can find information about my upcoming shows on my social media, on my Facebook page, on Instagram and Twitter as well.
That's excellent. I'm also wondering about distribution. Do you use a particular distributor or do you use more than one?
I do actually. Oh, that's a great question. I was using TuneCore for a while, and I recently switched over to DistroKid, so that's my distributor right now.
Yeah, I had recently heard more about DistroKid. I think that they have a pretty interesting deal. If I remember correctly, it's like $19.99 for unlimited songs for every year, right?
Yeah, and that's a great deal. You can't beat that.
Are you able to get marketing support for your releases through them potentially, or is it pretty much just strictly distribution?
I'm using them strictly for distribution right now. I'm sure they offer some sort of marketing resources, but I really haven't looked into it. So I'm just using them for distribution right now.
Interesting. And then in terms of your audience, is there a particular age group that you think is more connected to your music than another, or do you find that it's kind of across many different age groups?
Fortunately, from what I found, it's been across many different age groups. But I have found probably my biggest demographic is 18 to 35, but it's pretty evenly split between men and women. So that's awesome. I love that it feels like my music and my message gets across to all kinds of people from all different walks of life and different age groups.
Excellent. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's excellent. And as you know, I love the song, honestly, and I'm a big fan of what you're doing. I think you're very gifted. So this is Darian Renee, and my name is Evan Shapiro, and this is Music Made Real. Thank you for joining us, Darian.
Thank you so much for having me, Evan. This has been fun.